Yeah. Come on in, Jimmy. Close the door behind you and have a seat.
Okay.
You know, I got this new job here. I'm president now of the Parents Association for the Little League team of the Purgatory Pelicans. And as such, I get to work with the coach as well. So have a seat. This is like the hardest job that a president of a Little League team ever has to do. And it's, well, the job of coach, we're kind of reimagining that, we're kind of seeing some irreconcilable differences, So we think we're going to go in another direction, Jimmy.
Wait a minute. Are you saying I'm fired?
Yeah, that's kind of it.
What happened, man? Is it because I ate too much of the pizza at the party the other night?
No, that's not it.
What? Well, is it because I went ahead and benched your kid, little Tommy?
Oh, no, that's not it.
Hey, wait a minute. My phone's ringing. It's my agent, Scott. Hey, Scott. What's that? Oh, you got another job offer for me. What is it? General manager or manager? And who's this with? The Mets? Well, I got a job right now. I'm delivering pizza for Pizza Hut, so I don't know if I'll be available. But thank you, Scott. Welcome to Baseball Biz. I'm Mark Harbert, your host, and with me today, I have Mr. Mat Germain. Mat is the king of all knowledge when it comes to the Tampa Bay Rays, and especially all about the prospects and the farm system. We're going to get a bit of a deep dive into that and a better understanding of what it takes to build a team like the Rays and what that future is going to look like as well. So, Mat, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Well, we're glad to have you. And a lot of folks may not know you've been a writer as well from like D-Rays Bay and a lot of other things online. And certainly if you haven't seen Mat on Twitter, I think I said this before in previous show, definitely check him out. And you're at Mat _ Mat, M-A-T _ Germain, Germain. Am I correct?
That's correct.
All right, boys and girls. So anyway, we know we're talking about a knowledgeable fella. And if you haven't looked at it, it's amazing all the depth that you see on these teams. Looking at what just happened recently as far as the Rays year, we're not going to go through all this for you, boys and girls. We've lived it. We know what the season was like, and it was good. It was fun. But it's what does it take to build those teams? And hey, how about we celebrate what they've done? We got the MiLBy Awards coming out the other day. That's right. The Minor League Baseball of the Year award. What recognition did the Rays get on this?
Well, first, the minor league pitcher of the year was Taj Bradley, who lit it up through the entire season. Really, there was no let up in his game. He was close to 11 Ks per nine, 2.5 walks per nine, and his xFIP was great. But more than anything, it was his mound presence that I was impressed with. Whenever you watched him, the minor leagues know how to set these awards, and it just the impressive package that he has to offer just speaks that he's going to be a high caliber pitcher, probably in the same kind of way as Shane Baz is. When you put those two together, it's going to be serious, ammunition for the Rays.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that because watching Shane come up and doing the Olympics and everything else and still making it to the majors this past year has been exciting. You mentioned a stat xFIP. I don't know if everybody's going to know what that means. Can you tell us what that is?
Right. So it's the expected fielding independent pitching. So it's basically what you can expect that pitcher's ERA to be based on past performances.
Okay.
And so to me, it's a pretty good reflection on where he's headed, more so than what he did. If you want, what he actually did, then you can go with the ERA or the FIP, which is fielding independent. So you can actually get a feel by combining those three of where that pitcher stands. Now, when you look at his ERA, for instance, he's been below 2 the entire season.
Wow.
I think he was 1.7, if I'm not mistaken, in low A, and then 1.9 in high A. So he barely, saw a difference on the way up. He literally could have pitched in double A by the end of the season. He looked that strong. So I'm expecting big things. I think more than likely they'll start him off in Double-A next year, unless they feel he still has something he needs to work on, and then promote him early in the season. But more than likely Double-A, and that just, there's a reason the Rays are able to move a lot of pitchers like Joe Ryan and Drew Strotman and Peyton Battenfield, because they have so many guys coming up that they have to groom for. And Taj is definitely one at the top of the list. And then the other guy that got accolades was Colby White. And he's one guy that went through 4 levels. And at every level, and I watched a lot of his games, it was almost unfair. It was like trying to watch guys catch up to Colin Poche's fastball. They just seemed baffled by what they were seeing, right? And so when you see hitters being uncomfortable in the box, that's a great thing to watch. So you're on to something special with that pitcher. And Colby's one of those guys that could impact the Rays pen next year.
Well, yeah, that's the thing too. I mean, seeing these folks come up, the Rays are so deep in their farm system. I mean, I would venture to say that one of the reasons the Rays are able to keep their payroll down so low is because they've done so much to nurture this talent in the farm system. You know, I mean, this past year, I hated to see Adames go, but I kept waiting to see when's Franco going to come up. When's Brujan? When's Taylor Walls going to come up? Are we going to be a little heavily laden when it came to shortstop? You can pay a guy $500,000, or you can pay a guy a few million, and it's a world of difference. But if you got a strong farm system, you're going to see quite a bit of turn in who you have out there on the field, or you can.
Right. And if you take a look backwards just quickly, and you look back at where, before the season began, we knew that innings were going to be, in need for most teams. They're going to need a plethora of pitchers. And the Rays had enough pitching that they were able to just deal away Rich Hill, no problem. Yeah, we've got enough, because of the other moves we made and what we have in the system. And they were pitching rich the entire season. And in the season that was that demanding on pitchers that weren't really high innings, there was one guy that had high number of innings, you could say, for the Rays, above 150 innings. So that's incredible that they were able to do that. The taxing on the arms that they have now, they're actually able to maybe ask them to do a little bit more next year. So I think the Rays should get a lot of recognition for that, for not overtaxing the arms that they did have. And that'll bode well for 22 for sure.
Yeah, that's I think it's a good point about not overtaxing the arms. Watching the World Series and looking at what's happening out there with the Astros and the Braves, I kept thinking, who are they going to have in reserve? Max Fried, are they really going to continue putting him out there? Snit, okay. Well, I mean, he did real well, but if he started suffering, if he had, what was it? Oh, geez. One of the guys are not in the World Series in one of the postseason games, pitcher said, got his arm felt dead. He had a dead arm. And I thought, that's what can happen when you have this guy pitch, with 2 or 3 days rest. And how many innings are you going to have him pitch?
The Rays had that happen with Shane McClanahan. I know for a fact. I still don't understand why they had to go with Shane. They could have gone a multitude of other routes. I would have kept them for a game later. And I still have that vision in my mind of him throwing chairs around in the tunnel. And I'm hoping that it doesn't scar him, because it was the second year in a row that he struggled in the playoffs. And that can have a lasting effect. I don't think it will, but I'm just saying that teams have to recognize that they can't ask at the end of the year, when you have so little left in the tank. There's very few Madison Bumgarners out there that are, able to pull out the aces all the time. Max Scherzer was one, maybe, but you need to be a complete pitcher. You need 5 pitches to be able to do that, because you need to trick guys if you don't have the gas, right? So, anyways, those are the accolades. And also, I want to mention Durham Bulls as well. They got the minor league team of the year.
Good.
And I've said this on Twitter multiple times. They would have beaten at least 4 or 5 teams in Major League Baseball last year in a 7-game series. And I will go to, I even went to against Baseball America staff, telling them exactly why, that I believe that to be a fact. They had so much talent, especially if you keep Wander on the Durham Bulls.
Oh my gosh.
So, I mean, the fans in Durham were spoiled, and I think they're going to be spoiled again next year, more so than people think.
Well, I mean, because let's face it, the Rays roster gets crowded, and we still have quite a few talented guys. If there's an injury or somebody a little rehab, or maybe they just need to do some nuance on their talent, send them down to Durham. Man, the talented. If I was going to be in a minor league market, I guarantee you that I would want to be in Durham. I mean, I've said that time and again. If I had to move somewhere else into a baseball market again without a major league, that's where I'd want to be.
I'd have season tickets for sure, and hopefully a job that lets me go to all those games.
Even better. Oh, brother! While the season's done, World Series has been complete. Braves have won, and God bless them. It was a long, hard road, and hats off to their GM, man, oh man, for bringing all those folks in toward the end. But before all that even completed, a lot of players not on those teams were already heading out to Arizona for the fall league. And I know what is it, the Scorpions that we had some of the Rays on there. What were they doing? Have you remember anything about that, or have anything you can share?
I'll be quite honest. I haven't followed it as closely as years previous, and the reason for that is because I used to watch the games. You can't watch the games anymore, and I find that to be the most ridiculous thing ever. It's a marketing fail for Major League Baseball. They should be nationalized. Like, they shouldn't even be on MLB TV. They should be national TV broadcasts. These are the best players coming up. Yes, they're not playing for their normal teams, but that makes it even better. It's like a 6-team All-Star game, basically. I'm not going to say all of them are All-Stars, but a good portion of them are guys that the teams are trying to get a look at or more playing time for, because they're so close to the majors and they want to get a look at them in a different scene, et cetera, et cetera. So when you're looking at the Rays, for instance, they sent Curtis Mead, who's got the 4th most hits so far in the league with 23, and he's just the talk of the town. He's got a hitting streak going. He's hitting the ball well. He's not walking much. He's only got 3 walks, but against some of the best pitching, he's doing what he did shortly for the time he was in Durham. He's showing that he's very close to being a major league ready, hitter. And for the Rays, who've had this, I don't want to say, like, stability between Wendle and Choi at first and third base, it's almost time now, because of their salaries, to start flipping the page, right? So the timing couldn't really be any better for them. And they brought in Austin Shenton as well, who's also going to come into play in that sense a little bit. But if they were to look to upgrade one of those positions, either they can use Curtis Mead, or they can actually use him in trade and go get a Matt Olson or somebody else if they want, right? So it gives them a lot of options. The other guys that they have there are Matt Dyer, who's like I said before, a great prospect they got from the Mets for Rich Hill. That was a ridiculously lopsided deal. And it's not a knock on Rich Hill. Rich Hill did great for the Mets. Yeah. He had more gas left in the tank than I would have predicted, because at the time I thought he was about to fizzle out, but he did well for him. It's more about, you're going to get 6 to 7 years of Matt Dyer. It's for a 41-year-old pitcher.
Yeah.
And then they had also Carlos Garcia, who made the All-Star team as well. They have an All-Star game for the AFL. I don't know if you know that.
No.
But both Curtis Mead and Carlos Garcia. Garcia is a high-velocity thrower. Went to the ABL for a while. And spent some time there, hit 100 miles an hour while he was down there. He hasn't hit as often in the minors this year, but I think it's because he's trying to refine his location and not be as wild as he was for certain periods of time. But great hander. He could move really fast next year if he gets everything zoned in, and like I said, be an impact again for the Rays out of the pen. But making it into the Rays pen is no easy feat. You can ask Phoenix Sanders all about that. He's done everything he can do, and he still can't break the mold. So what can you do?
It's it's interesting to see, as they are moving up and who's moving out. Last year, Brandon, who's co-host here sometimes, I said, well, before the season started, I said, I'm surprised we still have Adames. I said, he's great. I love him. I want to keep him here, but I'm surprised we still have him. And just because of what I said earlier, but with the talent that we saw coming up, and it didn't surprise me. And more recently, I said, I don't see us keeping Joey Wendle. I love Joey Wendle. I want to see Joey Wendle out there ad infinitum, but there's all this great talent down there. I sincerely see that by midseason he'll be gone.
Yeah, I still don't know. Like I see Taylor Walls taking over that role eventually. And a lot of people are talking about moving Taylor Walls in trade. I don't think that's going to happen. He's too elite of a defender. He fits so well in the Rays mold, and his versatility plays up. So I think there's more chance that they trade Vidal Brujan, for instance, than they do Taylor Walls, both for that and the fact that I think Vidal may have more trade value. But Joey Wendle could be kept because he fits into the outfield as well. He's shown the ability to play out there. So even as a super utility guy, maybe a little bit like what Kike did, he can actually move around wherever the Rays need him. And he's such a tone setter in terms of the work ethic and the professional presence. You can't buy that kind of presence. Now, has it rubbed off on Brandon Lau and some of the other guys to the point where you can say, okay, well, we don't need Joey because it's rubbed off? Well, I don't know. It depends on what the Rays feel. But I still think that the guy who's going to move next is KK. And it has everything to do with Josh Lowe and the fact that so many teams need help in center field. They have money to spend now, more so than in a long time, I find. And once Starling Marte goes, I think KK is going to be moved, and the Rays are going to kind of be able to more afford Joey Wendle than they would have otherwise.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that as far as KK, and the weight that he carries salary. And yeah, they can certainly afford Wendle if they move KK. Just briefly on KK, I got to tell you, I was not completely surprised, but a little disappointed to see that KK was not up there for center fielder with the awards. And
I gotta admit, I haven't seen enough of Michael Taylor to make a judgment on what he presented. But having seen KK for year after year and what he's doing all the time, he started this year slow though, and I wonder if that's what hurt him. Because when you initially were going through the baseball savant stats, and I don't know how much they weigh into that at all. Sometimes they think they coin flip it, but But statistically speaking, the metrics were saying that he was starting slow, and I don't know if it was a knee issue, which he ended up getting cleaned up once the season ended. But there's something was slowing him down a little bit, where his jumps were, I don't want to say slower, but they were kind of not as direct as what they were, normally. So maybe that did hurt him. I don't know.
I don't either, but he's exciting to watch. Sometimes you think, okay, maybe a little theater was involved there, but that's okay because it's great watching, period. And if that time comes where he goes, then yes, it'll be sad, but I certainly see the need to keep that team fresh. Without getting too much in, folks, right now, the CBA is coming up, the collective bargaining agreement, which is, there's all kinds of news out there saying, this is going to go to heck. There's going to be a work stoppage. Your guys are going to be locked out, blah, blah, blah. Watch the news for that. We're not going to delve into that too much. But the thing of it is, there's a lot of ifs. Let's see if I can. But where was I going?
They've already, I don't know if you know this, but they've already taken down the pictures of the guys at the Trop in the front of the building at the gate.
Yeah,
they took down all the pictures. So originally what I was told is that they bought a black fabric that they were just going to lay over top of those guys if they were locked out, kind of like saying, black market or whatever.
Oh, geez.
So instead of doing that, they decided to just take the pictures down. Now, I don't know if they're going to put up something new eventually, and they were going to do that anyway. I don't know what happened, but
it's not the message sent out to the public. I guess you could have, black and purple drapes over the images and sadness that there's a dirge or something playing in the background. But yes, flowers can be laid in front of the building. I'll just say one more thing about this. Baseball suffered in a hard way in 94 and 95. Friends I know walked away from the game completely then. And it saddens me. I hope and pray that these folks can get together, hold their hands together, do the kumbaya, and keep a season for us coming up. So we'll have hopeful anticipation.
Right.
You know, we did that little kind of joke thing in there at the beginning about coaches and who's where and who may be going somewhere. I was scared for a moment. Somebody said, "Hey, Mark, you know, looking over at first base, you're not going to see Ozzie Timmons this year." I said, what are you talking about? I'm not going to see Ozzie Timmons. No, he's going to be focusing more on the hitting. I said, "Oh, good, he's still with the Rays." But it's going to be so weird this year. I got to tell you, man, looking over at first base and not seeing Ozzie.
Yeah, you know what? I think you might have just gotten a little bit used to being on the bench a little bit more, and you know those push-ups wear them out. So you know, you gotta have a rest once in a while. The older you get, those push-ups get harder and harder. So I think it'll be a good change. It's always good to shift things around and keep things fresh a little bit. So I don't see much into it. I also know Rodney Linares is managing down in the Dominican in the winter leagues.
Yeah, he did that last year too, I think. But anyway, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And he's got Brett Sullivan, who's a minor league free agent now. He's not owned by the Rays at all. They can bring him back if they want. But and Alex Valverde, who's another kind of strong right arm from, you know, he's in Double-A, and I think he's still got legit legs to be, you know, an impact if he wants. But he's got those two, and he's got Albert Pujols on his team.
Oh yeah,
which would be a very interesting platoon option if the Rays wanted to bring him in to pair with Austin Meadows, because their splits play so well against each other. But I don't know. That's just throwing caution in the wind, I think, and seeing where it lands. But replacing him, you know, replacing Cruz with him would cost a lot less, I think, in terms of salary. And I just don't know if Albert would be on board. But if anybody can convince him, Rodney can, right?
I love it that Rodney's there. Yeah, I love that he could. Man, wouldn't that be something? I mean, I'd hate to see Nelly go. We have needed a seasoned leader for the rest of the team that's not the coach. Obviously, if we look back and said more recently, Charlie Morton. And then when he left, you know, Rich Hill took that mantle to some degree. And then Nelly, you know, Nelson Cruz took that. So I was wondering, who might that be? And you know, Pujols, yeah, that'd be great. I don't think he's going to return to St. Louis, but
and that's the thing. I think if you look around the league and you say, well, who has an option at DH that we know of, right? Because assuming he signs pre-CBA, we don't know what will happen post-CBA. The National League will have DH. We don't know what he likes, but I mean, Tampa is close enough to the Caribbean and whatnot that he can possibly get to wherever, you know, he wants to go in those areas. He may want to play with Wander Franco. Yeah. He may want to have that option. The Rays had Nelson Cruz play at first base. So if they had Nelson Cruz play at first base, you know they're going to be open to using Albert Pujols at first base when needed, right?
Yep.
So he might get more field time than he would otherwise as well. And the Rays can kind of present that as an option, saying, well, we'll give you playing time 25% of the time. So he knows he still gets at bats against right-handers as well. Not too often, but, you know, just to keep him, you know, getting the at-bats he needs. I think he wants 20 to 25 home runs before he goes in the wayside. So we'll see. But I wouldn't be shocked, just because, like I said, the cost is lower and the Rays are still in that budget zone of 60 to 75 million-ish, depending.
And like I said, if Nelly's gone, I think we need that senior player. I think we need that veteran who can enlighten the young men as they're coming up. And I don't think it hurts if you have somebody, you know, who speaks, who's Hispanic, because you have so many young players, you know, who from different countries. Man, if he can talk the same language with them, all the better. So there's that. Of course, these days, most managers have been smart enough, and coaches say, I got to learn this so I can talk to my team. But
and I do want to touch on that for a second, because Wander Franco is driving around in a new Mercedes-Benz. He's got the diamond steering wheel that they showed on Twitter. He's a bling guy, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes guys can get carried away with that a little bit when they're young. And maybe Albert's the kind of guy that can guide them a little bit and say, you know, like, zone it in a little bit. This is important. This is not important. Don't get too far into it, right? So I don't know if Nelly had any conversations with him about that. Maybe he encouraged it. I don't know. It's hard to say.
But looking at all these players, and and looking, like I said, that Nelly's going to go. Do you want to talk for a moment about some of the free agents that we do see with the Rays?
So the guys that they're letting go, or the guys that they're getting back that they may target?
Well, the guys who basically, if they want to leave, they can. Archer, Cruz, Hunter, McHugh, those folks. And go ahead.
The two guys that I think they could possibly bring back, and it depends completely on them because I think they'd be able to get more elsewhere, is Collin McHugh and Michael Wacha. I think Michael Wacha found the way that his stuff can work, but I'm still baffled as to once he found it, why they didn't keep, pushing it instead of keeping starting, relieving, starving. It didn't make any sense to me that once they got him in a groove, they kept jungling him around. So I don't know. Maybe Collin McHugh would have the best chance, but then again, like I said, they have so many young guys they can bring in, and the Rays are not completely, on board with repeating guys so that they're still baffling teams with who they bring in. I don't know if that makes sense to you, but for instance, we go back to 2020, John Curtis was excellent for the Rays. He looked, exactly the kind of guy you'd want in there for 2 innings all the time. Well, instead of bringing him back, they dealt him. They got Evan Edwards, and they were able to bring in Collin McHugh to play that role, right? I think there's always going to be that turnover, and I don't know if it's to keep teams guessing or to keep guys, fresh, because bullpens are imperfect all the time. You're never going to find, we love all our guys, 1 through 8 or 1 through 7, and so they want a plethora of guys. And Collin McHugh could play a leadership role. I don't know what his thoughts are on the team now that he's been here for a year. I know he relied on Charlie Morton's reasoning for going there in the first place, with how the Rays didn't bring Charlie Morton back, and the way that it all played out, which is, I have like very few mistakes the Rays have made since I've been following them closely, and like trading Germain Marquez was one. I hated that deal for the moment it happened, and Charlie Morton is probably the biggest mistake. Not bringing him back for this year cost them money. And I know that sounds weird to say, but it cost them wins, it cost them money, and it cost them the ability to bring guys like Shane McClanahan, Shane Baz up the right way with the right leadership in place. There was no pitching leaders on that team once the playoffs started, and that's a horrible way to go into the playoffs. Even Shane McClanahan was getting interviewed. He's like, I'm a rookie. He kept saying it. I'm a rookie. Like, I don't know what you guys are expecting from me, but I'm a rookie. And, maybe keep your expectations down a little bit because I'm a rookie. and he felt the weight of the world on his shoulders because he knew he was still leading that staff, regardless of what he wanted. To have Charlie being able to step in there game 1 would have meant the world to him. And kind of lowered, so I think I really think that if you sat Erik Neander down in a room with the truth serum in him, he would tell you without a doubt they wanted Charlie Morton back with the Rays, and he would have signed him, to an extension. But Stu Sternberg said, no, we don't have the money. The same way he did at the deadline with Chris Bryant and Craig Kimbrell. I firmly believe that's the way that it happened, that it played out. And so I don't put that blame on Erik Neander or Kevin Cash or any of those guys. I put it on Stu Sternberg. The Rays won 100 games with the work that Erik Neander and his group did. They lost the playoffs because of Stu Sternberg. End of story.
I don't think there's any disagreement with you there. It comes down to resources. Erik Neander doesn't get to dictate what kind of a power he has as far as the resources come in because he doesn't completely control the wallet. If you don't control the wallet, you don't control completely what you can bring in there. You work with as much best as you can with what you're given. And, I remember there's something I probably say it time and time again about Erik Neander that he once said, and he was making some decisions that were unpopular, surprise. And he said, you have to be ruthless in this job. Mm-hmm. And I get that. But when he first came out, and we may have said this before, I was upset when suddenly Longoria is not there. He's like, what the heck are you doing? This guy, he's a legend. He's supposed to be here through thick and thin. He's supposed to retire here.
My two favorite GMs in the sport are Alex Anthopoulos and Erik Neander.
Here.
First thing Alex Anthopoulos did when he got to Toronto, he traded Doc Halladay. His first trade was to do that. Erik Neander came in, first trade. It was close to the first trade was Evan Longoria. So once you've done that as a GM and you've taken that Band-Aid off where you've traded a face of a franchise, everything else seems so much more simple at that point.
Yeah.
And you need some kahunas to be able to do that. You need to have, first of all, the confidence in yourself, being able to wear it if it goes bad. And secondly, in your team. What you're really doing at that point is empowering your team of scouts, of cross-checkers and everybody else that's saying, whoa, well, now they're listening to us. They're getting this, they're getting that. Now they have kind of this new, resurgence. And both of them, in each case, I know for a fact, relied big time on being able to listen to their guys. That's why when Alex Anthopoulos got to the Braves, he brought a lot of the guys from Toronto with him because he said, these are the voices that I listen to. They're the ones who are going to guide me in the right direction. And it's the same thing with Erik Neander. Like this year, I was so afraid that Carlos Rodriguez and Peter Bendix and some of the guys were going to start getting siphoned off like they did before. And you're seeing their success across the league. Like ex-Rays guys are, knowledgeable about being that kind of person that can say, well, yeah, that guy was great, but we need something new. We need something fresh. We need something different. And so I love the way they operate. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Chaim Bloom. He left the school of Neander, and the first thing he does is get rid of Mookie Betts with the Red Sox.
There you go. That's another example.
And what's going to happen to that team? At the beginning of 2020 here, but 21 here, we were saying, yeah, right, Red Sox. Well, they'll be lucky to catch up with the Orioles, and it's like good gravy. Mr. Bloom's done something right as well as that team. Okay, and okay, just for fun, I'm going to tell you, I look across what's happening on these teams. And the ones that say, I want to have them back. I want to have them back. Okay. I'm not talking about any sanity or what makes sense, but every time I see Nate Eovaldi on the out there on the mound, I want him back. Anytime I see Hunter Renfroe out there in right field, I want him back. These are guys I see playing for other teams, and it just grabs me and says, daggone it. Of course, Charlie and seeing him there with Darno, those are people that you see and say, if I could have my Rays team right now without it, that's who I'd still want to have.
So salary floor in, I think they'd still be there. That's the way it goes, right? If we had $100 million salary floor, Charlie Morton would still be with the Rays. Travis d'Arnaud, I'm not so sure because his injury issues are kind of put him in that Nate Eovaldi, thing where you're flipping a coin year to year. So what's going to happen? And the first half of the season, he missed with the Braves as well this year. So they had to piece things together, but. Yeah, I'm glad it turned out well for the Braves. I'm glad we didn't have to go through a Houston World Series win because that would have been depressing.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, the funny thing is, I'm saying, okay, I'm not pulling for an American League team. Okay, what can I tell you? But the hardest part for me to pull for the Braves, I enjoyed pulling for the Braves. I enjoy the team. I enjoy Snit. The hardest part was seeing Dusty on the other side. And damn, Dusty.
He had a good time. He was just happy to be at the World Series, man. I don't think he took it to heart, right?
I probably
It wasn't his 10th year with the team. You know what I mean? Like, if you want the picture of the guy who's like, look at a picture of Kevin Cash in 2015 and look at a picture of him this year in your playoffs. The white in the hair is just... I don't think there's much gray left. It's pretty much white now. So I feel for Kevin because I know he's trying to do the best he can with the team he has, but he wants to win it. He wants, that opportunity. But like Dusty will tell you, sometimes it can take a while to get that.
Yeah, it was a great year. Hopefully we'll get further next year. One thing I do want to say about the Rays this year, I was so glad that they actually got the deal with Zunino done, the whole opt-in thing. Last year, they drug him out. They basically I can't remember, did they actually DFA him last year? But they basically cut him loose at the end of last year.
Anybody could have signed him.
Yeah, and it wasn't until much later, before, well, it wasn't quite, when opening day, but it was much closer to that day than I thought we would be when we re-signed him. I was so glad because especially, like you said, there was some trouble with Darnold, was having some physical challenges, but I thought, good gravy, man. And one other thing I want to say about Zunino, he gets forgotten. I mean, it's real easy to look and say, oh, what's happening with that catcher in Kansas City who's not always a catcher, and look at the numbers that he puts up on the board. But if you look at bats and the number of home runs that Zunino delivers, they're going to be at least equal, if not higher, than was it Perez.
I'm sorry, but Mike Zunino's a way better catcher.
Thank you.
He might not be as good of a blocker, but overall package in terms of how he runs his staff. There's a reason the Royals weren't sniffing the playoffs, and the Rays have been doing great with Zunino behind the plate. He calls a great game, and that's something that's underrated and that we can't possibly rate except for by the results, right? But I do know the Rays went through a kind of a theory flip, if you want to call it that, where like from 2010 to 2015, they were signing high-end catchers, Nick Schufo, Justin O'Connor, Chris Betts, giving them millions. They were signing high-end catchers on the international market. They had David Rodriguez. They had Giosser Tejeda. They had a whole bunch of guys that were giving about, $250,000 to $600,000 on the international market.
Right.
So when you put all that together and then you look at the pain they went through, and as a franchise, never, ever, ever, ever having a true number one catcher until now, and having done it in trade and learning that catchers, between the age of 28 and 32 is when they hit their sweet spot. They're comfortable enough with their defensive abilities. They can work on their hitting because they have the extra time then to actually dive into that, right? And the wear and tear, they start to learn how to deal with it and get stronger in the right parts. So I think the Rays now are much better equipped, and that's why they keep targeting guys in trade like Matt Dyer, for instance, Logan Driscoll, Blake Hunt. They've brought in a lot of guys that are really high-end caliber defenders, and then they'll work on the hitting and wait for them to develop as they get older. Rene Pinto, adding him to the 40-man is a huge deal. That guy is a cannon of an arm. I watched him in Durham, and there guys on first base will be afraid that he'll throw behind them all the time, because he will, and he has a snap throw that will take them out. So I'm excited to see him. I think the catching market is shallow enough that if the Rays wanted to move Mejia, Rene Pinto is ready to actually move into that role.
Wow.
Having somebody like Zunino there to mentor him would be great. Would be a tremendous opportunity. If the Rays, can't afford Zunino because he repeats what he did this year, next year, then at least they have Pinto to pair with Blake Hunt or whoever it ends up being, right? I do hope they bring back Chris Betts, though, and give him a shot in AAA, because that guy's been injured, freak injuries, this, that, the other thing, and I think there's so much more potential in his bat that they should give him a shot in AAA, kind of like what they did for Joseph Odom, and see what he can do.
Matt, I love your insights. You see so much deeper than any of us on a regular basis are able to see. And, we see the crops as they come in, but you've got a much greater depth of that. And I appreciate you sharing that with us today. The other thing you and I briefly talked about earlier is Rookie of the Year. And there's 3 folks for that. 2 of them are Rays, Arozarena and Franco. And what's interesting about that is, there's a lot of pundits who say, well, Franco hadn't been out there long enough. There's other players who've been out there more. And other ones say, well, Arozarena, he's been out there for almost 2 years. So which one of these guys are rookies? But either way, they're both great talents and they should be recognized.
Well, I think there's a couple of differences. Randy Arozarena played professionally before he became a minor leaguer, right? So he's got a lot more wear and tear on him. He's got a lot more experience. And so in the clear definition of a rookie, I think Wander Franco fits the description a hell of a lot more. And the fact that he was a 2-hole hitter that redefined the lineup once he got there and broke records as a contact hitter and on-base machine, I don't know. It's one of those things where you wish that he could have had 2020 to build, his repertoire in AAA so that he could have, in a way, it's almost his fault. And I'll explain it in this way, okay? He could have signed an extension. He could have gone to his agent and said, listen, I think I'm worth this. The Rays, I'm sure, know what I have to offer. I'm willing to sign for this before the season starts. And he would have started with the Rays. He would have been the 2-hole, opening day, no problem, because he was the best hitter on the team.
Yeah.
I don't care what anybody says. He was already the best hitter on the team. Everybody knew it. You don't have so little swing and miss and such high contact rates from both sides of the plate as a switch hitter. It never, ever happens. And I had this debate with the guys on Baseball America. They're like, name us the 5 best players in Major League Baseball. And I put Wander Franco in there. And they're like, why? How can you actually do that? He hasn't played enough. I said, nobody can ever do what he's done. He's the best switch hitter we've seen since Chipper Jones. And there aren't many guys you can put in the league right now in the same conversation as Chipper Jones. Yes, right. Shohei's in there, Mike Trout, DeGrom is a great, talent that I had in there. So I just think, the system is at fault, to be honest, because of the playing time and the control that the teams want over guys. But the pandemic had a lot to do with it as well, because if he would have been able to show what he could do, in AA, AAA last year, he skipped over AA. I think sometimes that gets missed too. Like, not many guys skip over AA. You have A-Rod and Juan Soto are 2 other guys that kind of did it, handily. But even Vladdy Jr. couldn't do that. Like, he went through each level. So it's one of those things where it makes his season and what he accomplished even better than it already is. I think once we see his power come through, and I think we will, and we saw it in the playoffs a little bit, doing what he did in the playoffs in the short time that he was there, it just speaks that when he gets there again, look out, because he's going to light it up. It's going to be fun to watch.
Well, brother, I can't thank you enough. I'll tell you, Matt, for being here today with us and sharing, a look at the farm system, looking at what the Rays have done, looking at potential movement here and there. And man, anybody, like I said, if you want to catch up with what's going on with the Rays, if you want to see that garden that is growing, Matt does a great job of that on Twitter. So again, Matt Germain, that's _ Matt, and that's M-A-T, and then _ Germain, and that's Germain. And you're there, brother. I look at your stuff every day because I learned something new. So thank you for doing that.
Not a problem at all. I love it. Thank you very much.
Well, it's a pleasure having you here on Baseball Biz. And I want to pick your brain again in the future. I know you're working on some special projects you can't talk about right now, but I'm looking forward to those as well, my friend.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay. Well, that was Matt Germain joining us here today on Baseball Biz. Want to thank him and thank you all for joining us. And raise up.
You've been listening to Baseball Biz. As always, you can find us on your favorite podcast directory, including Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and more. Thanks again, and remember, you can also check us out on Twitter at @TheBaseballBiz. Take care and have a great week. Special thanks to XTakeRUX for the music rocking forward.